life, my death. Respect our choice. Respect our choice.
Hello, America. I'm Marlena Billings.
And I'm Shayna Amster, here to welcome you back to Debatable, where we will discuss the nation's top ethical questions and then get your opinion.
Today, we're here in Sacramento to examine the End-of-Life Option Act and get personal interviews with some of the top people on the case. The big question here is, should terminally ill patients be able to request lethal drugs from their doctor? This is called physician-assisted suicide, and it's a big issue.
First, let's go talk to some protesters outside the Capitol. Good afternoon. We're from the popular TV show Debatable. Do you mind if we ask you a few questions?
Not at all. We are determined to speak our mind.
How does the End-of-Life Option Act affect you?
Well, you see, I have a 16-year-old sister, and she's suffered from depression for 2 years. I've often been fearful that she would take her own life. I'm concerned that if the law is passed, it would make suicide an easy option for teenagers, who can make rash decisions and don't always think clearly.
Thank you. How about you, ma'am? What is your opinion?
Well, I'm all for the act. My mother-in-law had cervical cancer and was in terrible amounts of pain with no chance of recovery. It was so hard to watch her struggle. She was technically living, but she was miserable. I believe that a peaceful, painless death by her own choice would be much better than what she suffered through. This could help so many people with illnesses like my mother-in-law's.
It's true. I'm so sorry for your loss. That must have been terrible to watch as a little family member. Well, it's time for us to head inside and talk to Senator Wolk and Mother Adelaide McCarthy, both major stakeholders on the End-of-Life Option Act.
Now it is time for Mother Adelaide McCarthy, a member of the Catholic Church, to give her argument.
Thank you, Shayna. The act of suicide, physician-assisted or not, is against God's will. It has been and will always be. Human life is a gift given by God, and we must accept that gift with respect and gratitude. Taking one's own life demeans its value. There should also be an element of uncertainty. Taking one's life completely erases chance of recovery. One should not give up or stop hoping for miracles. Though many diseases are painful, while you are living, the small chance of recovery still exists when one cannot come back to life. The patient's mindset during such an emotionally and physically difficult time should also be considered. Depression and anxiety affect many terminally ill patients. Suicidal people have largely diminished capacity to make decisions, and this option could result in increased teen suicides as well as plain and simple abuse of the system. If unethical doctors gained access to these patients, they could help them die even if they know there's a chance of recovery. In a worst-case scenario, assisted suicide could become legalized murder. There could also be intense pressure for some to choose the option of suicide. The elderly, the disfigured, the mentally challenged. Will we not care for our mothers, our grandfathers, instead of forcing them into an early death? Finally, the idea of assisted suicide violates the Hippocratic Oath itself. The oath states, "I will not give a legal drug to anyone if I am asked, nor will I advise such a plan. And unless doctors wish to break it, physician-assisted suicide cannot be allowed." The evidence is clear, and I hope you will agree that legalizing the right to die is a mistake, and if we are not careful, we could live in a world without love or caring, and the Church wants no part of such a world. Please consider my words. Thank you. Hello, viewers. I'm Marlena Billings, and I'm here with Senator Wolk, a major stakeholder on the Death of Dignity Act. She's here to give her case for the act.
Thank you, Marlena. How would you feel if your mother, who is dying from a lethal and aggressive form of brain cancer, could not get the option to die by her own choice? If she was suffering beyond anything that you have ever seen, and to watch her be in such agony and pain without any way to hasten death. None of us should have to travel to a different state where the law has been passed or have to suffer beyond our will. This is what the End-of-Life Option Act is for, so that terminally ill patients who wish to suffer no longer can end their life. During this process, patients who are diagnosed with a terminal illness, have less than 6 months to live, are 18 years or older, and are capable of making and communicating health decisions for themselves may take advantage of the bill. Two physicians must determine whether these criteria have been met. The patient is then prescribed the medication and have to take it themselves. Patients will have the opportunity to die without fear that they will lose their physical capacities. They can also arrange for final goodbyes with loved ones. If planned in advance, organs can be harvested and donated, which is beneficial to patients who need organ transplants. Though many say that aid in dying violates the Hippocratic Oath, this is not true. As said in the Hippocratic Oath, one must treat their patient with the best care possible, and releasing someone from their suffering could be considered the best care possible. Also, aid in dying is not suicide. The bill is only allowed to be used by people who are considered terminal, not suicidal. Please take my argument into consideration and remember, would you want this option to be available for you if you were on your deathbed?
Thank you so much for joining us today, Dr. Amster.
Thank you, Miss Billings, and thank you, Miss Amster. It's a pleasure to be here on your show.
Wonderful.
So, for our first question, we have, why do you support the End-of-Life Option Act?
Great question. So I'm a pain specialist, which means that I deal with treating patients with end-of-life pain that are at the end of their life from horrible cancers and diseases. And so I've been doing this work for about 10 years, and I've seen some horrific deaths. And because of watching patients suffer greatly, I strongly support this legislation.
Thank you.
I see. So do you believe that this is against the Hippocratic Oath?
Great question as well. You know, doctors take an oath to not harm our patients, and part of the continuum of taking care of people from the time that they're born to the time they die is part of the role of a physician. And when someone's at the end of their life, it's important that we help them in transitioning when they're going to die. So I actually feel that this is not, so some of the opponents say they call this medical suicide. I actually believe this is not technically medical suicide. And all of the medical organizations actually call this medical aid in dying. So it's actually considered an appropriate option for people that are in the last few days or weeks of their life to help them transition in their dying process.
So how does this bill affect medical doctors?
So one thing that is really well written about this bill is that it gives doctors the option to choose not to participate if they don't believe in the bill. So if a doctor happens to be Catholic and they have a personal view against using this legislation, then they don't have to participate. And there's no penalty or nothing that will sanction the doctor from not being a part of the legislation. So it gives everyone the individual right to choose based upon their own values.
All right. Well, lastly,
Sure.
what would happen if a patient requested the lethal drugs, obtained them, but then decided not to use them?
Great question. So when we look at the data in Oregon, so Oregon's had this law legal for 19 years, and they actually collect data on every patient that gets the pill, and then they collect data once they take the pill. And actually, only about half the people that get the pill ever take it. They may die suddenly before taking the medication, or they may change their mind or their values or something shifted for them. So what would happen is if someone was given the prescription, the family member or the patient, if they decide not to take it, could turn it into back to the pharmacy where they'll dispose of it appropriately, or they can drop it off at a hospital where the hospital can also dispose of the medication.
Wonderful. Thank you so much again. You provided so much insight for us.
Thank you. It's a pleasure to meet you
Thank
both.
you.
Thank you very much.
We've got all the facts and all the opinions, and now it's your turn to make a decision. Do you side with Mother Adelaide McCarthy in the Catholic Church and agree that the right to die bill should not be passed? Raise your hands if you want to vote against physician-assisted suicide.
Or do you agree with Senator Wolk and Dr. Michael Amster that the right to die bill should be passed? Raise your hand if you vote for this choice.
Interesting choice. This bill has actually already passed on Monday, October 5th, 2015. Governor Jerry Brown signed the legislation and approved the bill. However, it will not actually take action until April of 2016. But soon, terminally ill patients will be able to choose their time to die.
As quoted by Jerry Brown on the day he signed the bill, "I do not know what I would do if I were dying in prolonged and excruciating pain. But I am certain, however, that it would be a comfort to be able to consider the options afforded by this bill, and I would not deny that right to others."
Thank you very much. I hope you've enjoyed this episode of Debatable and that you learned a lot. We'll see you next time.
Bye!